Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, I've actually had to go through a variety of places to work. After my graduation, I work with the public service. In my country, I'm a Nigerian. And where I had an experience that was quite close to my repair was, I came back from the UK and I was very motivated to work, to contribute my own quota to national development. And I found myself in a research institute where I was working, but somehow I felt I wasn't really fully engaged. And I decided to look for another job. And I found an institution that was created while I was out of the country, was based within the presidency. And I said, oh, this would be a good place to work. And I went for the interview. Later, I happened to find a professor of mine who was there, who said to me, but you did very well, but while we were going through the interview is the chairman, who was an army general, because this was the presidency, and it was during the military era, said, no, there's no woman that can really work here because there's a lot of hard work. It involves going around the country. I was told that, but eventually he was convinced that, why don't you give her a trial? Because the very first statement I made when I got to that place was, is there enough job to keep me fulfilled and engaged? And I asked that. I didn't know why. So I was given a trial, and I heard the comment, but I was completely impervious to such comments. I was focused, and I was just being myself, working hard, not proving anything. But it was good because almost 4 years down the line, the chairman himself, who was a military general, came to my office and said, Funke, I have a confession to make. When you were interviewed, I was convinced that no woman can actually work here because of the nature of the job. But you've proven me wrong. I'm very sorry. Like I said, I was just being myself. That was one thing. And that has helped me because I left the public service as a deputy director, planning, research, and statistics to join international organization. And I've had to work from the country office level through the regional office to the headquarters where I finally retired. I must say, first of all, women have to be convinced that they are competent. I think it's an insult for somebody to say to me, you are employed because you are a woman. I didn't pass my exams because I was a woman. Why should I then be considered because I'm a woman? Yes, you should be considered as a performer, somebody who can perform. And I think that's really the mentality women should have. So I've gone through the public service to international agency and then back to the industry, where I know it's a family business, but then many times women, okay, like Maripe said, you can be met at the till. That's okay. Women should be at the till, but that shouldn't be. How many women get seen at the operation level, on the operation floor? So I know the first time I go to the operation floor, the men will look at me, but I felt very free. I knew they were looking at me, but I wasn't looking at their faces, that sort of thing. And I think that's the way it should be, that one needs to be knowledgeable about every area of the enterprise in order to move forward. So that has been it.
Could I just follow up? You talk a lot there about personal characteristics, and there's an expression that I often hear about having fire in your belly, which is your own determination and your own conviction. Do you think, because your background has been academic and also working in the WHO for public health, and now more recently you've moved to the food industry, have you noticed a difference between those kind of industries in the food sector where one, your merit and your value is really what drives you through along with fire in your belly? Have you noticed a difference then with the food industry side of things? Is it tougher for women in one sector rather than the other? Because Marie-Pierre has spoken about your experience where people have said, well, it's hard work, you have to carry this. It's all about, nearly physical attributes. Is there a difference in your mind?
Yes, because it's like working for the World Health Organization. You are purely into development. But then what helped me a bit was there was a particular project that I was coordinating globally, which actually linked income-generating activities to health promotion. And that actually launched me into the industry to start with. And I know that here you have to have a balance between development and making money. By the time I now got into industry proper, I know that the industrialists are not there as charity. They're there to make money, but making money with a face. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Please, can I just get... I make that. My teas. Yeah.
Oh, your teas.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, they've just
a pack of tea.
Sorry, the box is just under the chair there.
Just
Thank you.
Pack, yeah, sorry. Thanks. Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
These teas are wonderful.
Yeah, we make teas. These are wellness teas from moringa, from hibiscus, ginger, and turmeric. Coming into this, I said, okay, I'm a health professional. We live in Africa. People have to meet their fluid requirement. And most people are used to meeting their fluid requirements with sugared drinks. How then do I influence this to get people to get satisfied meeting their fluid requirements and yet improving their health? And that has been what my previous profession has taught me. So the ability to be able to put this into it, and whatever development I'm encouraging our factory about, I always put that behind me, at the back of my mind, and that has been quite helpful. It's tougher in the industry, definitely it's tougher for women at the operation level, but I've got to study more and get more involved in it, at least to have a very good knowledge about every aspect of our operations. It's tougher, but it's not insurmountable. And women can do it because we are multitasking, and we can do it. And we should be convinced about ourselves that we are competent and we'll get it done.
Thank you very much. Mecca, can I ask you, you have a very varied background as well. You are the co-founder of Women in the Food Industry. You've worked as a blogger. You've done all sorts of exciting creative things and in the media. You currently work in the Women in Food Industry organisation by championing and discussing issues facing women in the food industry. Can you tell me what the major issues you see for women in the food industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these have been covered really well by Marie-Pierre earlier on. We are generally in the minority in this industry, particularly amongst professional chefs, which is where my background came from originally. I used to work for a big food website called Great British Chefs. I was head of marketing and social media there for almost 8 years. And even though our company was half run by women, we actually only had a very small proportion of women that were actually on our website. And as a company that's half owned, half run by women, that was not a great thing for us. And we wanted to turn that around. So we found that certainly much in the professional chef world, that women are probably about, to be generous, 17% of professional chefs are women. which is a really small proportion when, you know, we've got more than 50% of us in the population. So what we wanted to do with women in the food industry was try to find a way of highlighting the great things that women across the entire industry were doing, not just professional chefs, but food producers, farmers, food photographers, food writers, policymakers, all women, because we found that in the UK there were little pockets, not little pockets, there were organisations that were like women in farming or women in meat or women in hospitality, but nothing bringing the whole food arena together, because we all felt that we could help each other. And that's really where our mantra comes from. It's women helping other women. I think what we find is that women are very, very good at supporting supporting people in general, but particularly at supporting other women.
Yeah.
And since we've been running this organisation, which has only been February this year, I've been amazed at the women who are so senior in the UK, in the food industry, who have offered their support and have offered their help. It's just been like a joy for me to see this. And that's kind of what we want to do. We want to continue doing that. We want to highlight what women are doing in, you know, whenever Michelin stars or things like that come out, there's so few women that win these. On TV programs, we have big shows in the UK, MasterChef professionals. Again, so few women that are actually on the screen. We've just found that it's an area where, like I said, we want to show what women are doing in a really strong, powerful way. And again, I think as Marie-Pierre said, it's not like we're asking for special treatment as women. We're just asking for equity. We're just asking for the same treatment as men. And that's kind of really where we come from.
I think you've touched on a point I'm personally very interested in, is the idea of women helping each other up. And it's a lovely concept, but there are examples, and I think maybe in the past so much where the ladder has been lifted up. Women who've got to the top have lifted the ladder up, which isn't right. And I was delighted to meet somebody who shared a PhD supervisor with me. My PhD supervisor was female, and she said to me, I'm giving you a hand up, you extend your hand to the next person. And that's always stuck with me, because you create a chain. And I think that's a wonderful thing we can do. Yeah. So can I open the floor for questions? Has anybody any questions for any of our panellists? No, not yet. I just wanted to ask you, I suppose, personally, maybe for you, Funke, it's quite interesting because we've both come from maybe an academic, we've both been through the whole PhD. In fact, we're in similar institutions. We're both in the same institution, I think. At what stages in your career do you really wish you had a little bit more support?
I think, not in the food industry, you know. While I was at the international organization level, because of the requirements of the job, I felt, okay, it would have been better to actually have more support. And in doing a few of the things you are required to do, I remembered when I had to go into Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I just had to do it, and I did it. And also, I was in Yemen, and those were not too easy places, but I had to do that because, well, maybe one thing is good because it launches you out when you are in a situation where it's more or less gender neutral.
Yeah.
So that toughens you more a bit. But probably a little bit of support could have been helpful.
Yeah.
but then that was good.
I think what I'm picking up is very much that you have to take that courageous step very often yourself and just say this needs to be done. I will do it. And Marie-Pierre as well, you mentioned, feeling, can I do this? Can I do this? And very often, you just have to go out there and do it. And I wonder, do women approach those kind of scenarios with more trepidation than men? What do you think about that, Mecca? Do you think that, say, for example, you mentioned as well MasterChef, and it is full of often quite aggressive individuals, and then I check over to Channel 4 for the Bake Off, Great British Bake Off, and it's all lovely. I'm just wondering, is there sort of a difference in how men and women sort of step into these quite difficult situations?
Yeah. I think women tend to be possibly a little bit more realistic about themselves, and we're not perfect, and I think women are good at saying they're not perfect, but sometimes to our own disadvantage. We might say that too many times, whereas men are like, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm fine at doing this. And as we say, like sometimes on MasterChef, on those shows, when particularly there's a show called Great British Menu, which is similar to MasterChef, the judges say, okay, how would you judge your dish? And the women always underjudge themselves. The women always give themselves like, 5, 7. Men are like 9, 10. And you're like, where's this coming from? So, but I feel that if we as women should, recognise our own value and recognise our own worth and recognise that some things which may be seen as weaknesses, like potentially having children and maybe potentially not being as physically strong as men in some occasions, actually are strengths, because you've got a nurturing that you have as a mother and as someone bringing up a child. In a management style for women, I've often found, I've managed lots of people throughout my career, and I try not to micromanage people, and I try to sort of like build them. And I think, again, men may have a more sort of, not domineering at all, but more of a, do this, follow my lead. Whereas I think women are more like, how can I lead you? How can I bring you up? How can I nurture, not so much nurture, but how can I, make you realise your own skills and how valuable your own skills are to the business, even though everyone has different skills. And I think it's acknowledging that everyone has different skills and everyone has different roles to play in any organisation and in any business as well. And it's taking people that have got a variety of skills, or from diverse backgrounds too, and realising the great strength of all of those diverse skills, abilities, background, experience, and highlighting those really.
Yeah. And that means also, when speaking about restaurants, so what you said is very true about women in the kitchens. They are less visible. They tend to run smaller restaurants and to go less on TV and in conferences and so on. And we were really, really pissed off last year when the Michelin announced the new promotions in France, and there was no restaurant run by a woman that got a new star. There were 2 restaurants in France where there was a man and a woman in the kitchen who got promoted. Guess what? Michelin, they did not give the names of the women on their press release. It was just the man. So we got pissed off, and one of our friends from Elson Food, who is a famous journalist in culinary sector in France, got super pissed off, and she decided to make a map of French women chefs in France. So Michelin and the others could not say, oh, there's no women, we don't know where they are, la, la, la. And we contributed by giving names of women chefs to be put on the map, and they released the map on Télérama, that is a French publication website, on March the 8th last year. And there was lots of coverage of this release, and that's what we can do as organizations, is to make sure that these women, even if they have smaller restaurants, even if they don't run for Michelin stars because they don't care having restaurants on all the planet and not being in their kitchens any longer, but some may want to have Michelin star. But if they're not recognized, if they're not visible, it will be much tougher for them. So with our organizations, I think we can contribute to have them more visible, and that's great. And there's now a guide of women chefs in France that we helped being written as well. And there was maybe, have you seen this movie in English? It's Goddesses of Food. And Veran, who has realized this movie, we know very well. And we've organized a projection of the movie, and we invited 10 women from the Elson Food Network to share their experience at the end of the projection to show that, yes, there is a true topic about women being less visible, daring less, getting less funding for their projects and so on, and all together we can help solving this issue, and that's fantastic that we are together on the same stage. So to start connecting, giving hands, and making sure that we support all these initiatives, because we are all going in the same direction, and there's not one network or one organization against another. No. The more we speak about it, the more we raise awareness, the more we have a chance to succeed, and the greatest victory will be that in X years our networks are not needed anymore. That will be the greatest success.
Okay, so any questions from the floor? I really want to make this, great. I really want to make this your opportunity to either tell your story or ask our panelists here to tell more about their stories. So please feel free to use that microphone.
You all mentioned about women maybe being less ambitious in terms of the amount of money that they ask for if they're getting funding for their companies. But it kind of comes back as well in terms of the disparity between pay for men and women. I think as well when you mentioned about women going on maternity leave, that also impacts their salary, because if you take 6 months out and have a few children, then maybe you're a year or 2 years out of the workplace. So I'm kind of wondering, how do you think companies and people can combat that or work around that? Is it in terms of, maybe making women more aware of what pay scales are for certain jobs? Is it an industry thing that they should be maybe more transparent in different pay scales? Or I'd like to just get your opinions.
Yes, so there are several initiatives that come from government, so I'm more aware about what's happening in France, but I'm sure in other countries, and I'm not speaking about Scandinavia, that is a different world on that, on that topic, let's say. But for sure, there are some companies that give a financial compensation for the time away from the job. There are some companies that put some programs to help women coming back from maternity leave to cope with this time they've been away, and make sure it's compensated in one way or another, to make sure their integration back is accelerated and optimized, to make sure that they can go on their career as planned. There's of course the financial aspect, but also the coaching and the support aspects. But you're right, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 children and you are away from your job, it may have an impact. So it's also the role of the organization and your role to make sure that you are aware that it shouldn't be a break. It's unfair. And we need to make the organizations putting things in place so it is felt less unfair. So probably paternity leave will be part of the equation, because it can probably help reducing the discrimination at the hiring step. Then there's something about negotiating your salary. To be honest, every year I was going to this performance review meeting, even if I'm pretty self-confident and not shy, the point of discussion about the pay rise, I could feel there was something happening, or should I dare? And anything I was asking, I was always told that I could not get this because of the budget, blah, blah, blah. There was something quite frustrating. There's also the time maybe you may terminate a contract and you will have to negotiate the check you will get, and you need to be helped also in this process. And for sure, and that's a reality, and there are lots of studies that show that, is that negotiating the first salary, we are less good at negotiating it as women. So if organizations set up some charts of salaries that are equal to start, then apply an equivalent area of progression based on performance, would you be a man or a woman, then we will have a world that is more fair for everyone. But it's about valuing performance and talents rather than who you are that will help having something more egalitarian. But that means HR in organizations and management of organizations have a crucial role to play. And we need also to speak up when we face a situation that is unfair. And in my past company, McDonald's was very engaged in diversity and inclusion, but at some steps in my career, I faced some situations that I felt were unfair. And because there was the Women Leadership Network that had made me aware that I should not accept situations that were unfair, I dared to speak up in front of my boss. And at some stage, I can tell you, I had a boss who taught me many things, but he was a man from finance, and he was from Austria, a country where when you are a mother getting back to work, you are a bad mother. So I had, seriously, it's a cultural, you have also to face with cultural differences and to make sure that you can explain what you want your career to be and what you want your personal life to be, and that you want to solve the equation with the help of your organization. It's not easy, but seeing you so numerous today and to see that it's on the agenda, there is at the FIE an award for diversity and inclusion, and there are some governments that take action, some big organizations and smaller that set examples is great and gives good hope, I think. Don't you think?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
I think it's really interesting your focus on, I've written it down, negotiate. I think that word fills a lot of people with terror in the workplace, particularly when it comes to conversations about salary and personal situations. So, any other questions from the floor? Ian?
Just a quick one on when you're a leader in your workplace, have your staff maybe treated you differently because you're a woman, or do they take you more seriously or less? What type of challenges have you just faced as being a leader in?
That's a really good question.
I think that happens because first they feel the authority coming from a woman sometimes should be less firm than that of a man. But there are two ways to handle this. First, not in a bossy manner, but you let the people know your competence matters quite a lot, because no matter what, workers test you out, and it happens everywhere. Once they recognize this, that look, this lady manager or lady CEO is as competent as the male CEO, they respect you. And first, also you need to let the workers know that you deal with performance. Try as much as possible to be gender neutral.
Yeah.
It's extremely important. Let people know that they are there to work and to contribute. And there are rules to guide the organization, provided that you, as a boss, as a female leader, also you are compliant to the rules of the organization, and they respect you. Once the rules are broken, there are consequences for it, and you carry this out. you have to be a fair boss and not discriminatory also in your own actions. And by and large, you are respected for that. And they know that, oh, she's a woman, but she knows her onions, and they respect you.
I think we'll just wrap up very quickly. I mean, we were originally focusing on the topic of how can women become leaders or progress. And I think that we have indirectly covered a lot of the material, particularly around the challenges women face and the support that they need in the workplace. Not just women, but we've also touched on the really important points that you've just made, Funke, about being gender neutral. And Mecca, you said we're not looking for anything other than equality. And I think that is what we really want to achieve. And I really do long to see a workplace that is gender neutral and that caters for families, irrespective of whether you're a male parent or a female parent, that things are covered and that women have the freedom to just work with their own competence and be confident in that. Do you have any final points to make about that progression and what support women need to become leaders, from manager to leader? Marie-Pierre, is there anything that you feel we haven't covered in that particular area?
I think we've spoken a lot already about this, but really raising awareness of this topic among the organization is really crucial, and feeling empowered as women and as men and as young and as disabled. And there's a real question about feeling empowered to dare to stay true to yourself, because you should not behave like a man to progress in an organization. I don't want to fall into the stereotypes of management styles. I don't think there is a feminine way of managing and a masculine way of managing. There are different styles of management styles, and we need to value of all this diversity in management style to have organizations that are more inclusive, that are more diverse, and that as a result will be more performing. And that's about raising awareness is probably step one to make sure that things will then be cascaded. And this is at all levels, because I think it's a mistake to think it's only at top level that it has to be decided. It has to be spreaded at all levels of organizations to identify talents of all kinds, to nourish the pipeline of talents for the organizations to progress and to become more performing, but also more attractive for talents. Because what we were saying yesterday at the ministry is that people are looking at joining organizations that share values with them. And it's a question of having values, promoting these values, and living these values every day. And it's not only a CSR report, even if now it's a pillar of CSR policies in companies. It's a must to really be honest about it, I believe. And I think the Elson Food women in the room will support.
Mecca, do you have anything to add to that about the just final words on women going from managers to leaders?
I think to probably be the manager or leader that you would aspire to be, or that you wished you had when you were starting out in an industry, because it's very easy. I mean, we interviewed loads of women, and our final question to most of these female food founders is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out? Everyone has to start out somewhere, and I think it's really important to remember what it was like when you were starting out. As if you've now reached a good position in your career, but to remember what it was like when you first stepped into an office, or you had to send your CV to someone, or you just had to knock on a door, to remember what that feeling was like, and try to help people get over that initial fear and get that confidence out, because We were talking earlier on about imposter syndrome, and there's a big phrase very much in UK startups, which is kind of like fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It's like kind of being more powerful than you actually might feel that you are at the time, because people won't really realise, and they'll think you are powerful, because that in itself is a power.
Yeah.
But I think also women should be prepared to move around the organization more. Because if we are going to become a leader in an organization, you have to have the mentality of knowing more about the entire enterprise.
Yeah.
Becoming more of generalist than specialist. And that's a bit that is really, really important, because the enterprise will not, you have to know the enterprise you are working in. A manager would be task-driven, but a leader has to be passion-driven. And that covers the entire organization, the entire enterprise. We've got to know the business you are going to lead. And I think we should be prepared as women to be that, either at the operation floor, at dealing with finance, everything. We shouldn't really shy away from that.
I could talk about this forever. And that's such a brilliant point, because that reflects quite interestingly what Mary Pierre said earlier, that very often with the imposter syndrome or whatever it is, women are working to really prove themselves in a particular area and focus. And then at a higher level, that focus will not serve you. The niche focus will not serve you so well. You need to become generalists. So in a way, we're running to stand still, if you like, in our careers, running to achieve excellence in one particular area. But actually, when you want to progress in your career, you need to be a generalist.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very interesting paradox, I think. And with that, I would like to thank our speakers. You've been wonderful, and I've learned so much from you. Thank you. Thank you.